And welcome to Writer's Life, a place where you get the sight, sound, smells, taste of my particular writer's life. You get the ruler. I always got to have this ruler. You get the truth, nothing but the truth. So help me God. I have to say that because I have best-selling crime author Frank Scalise here right now. Frank Scalise, a.k.a. Frank Savero, a.k.a. Frank. What's the other one?
Frank Saverio.
Oh, didn't I say that? I said Safiro.
Yep. Zafiro is the crime, and Saverio is the sci-fi and fantasy.
Oh, all right. Okay. All right. No wonder I'm so. I always thought that Zafiro was your real name. So I always and I felt a kinship with you because we were both Z's, and when it was commonplace to have when you had no other choice but to have all your books in paper and at the bookstore,
Right.
we were always all the way down on the right, on the bottom shelf where nobody saw them. You'd have to be a mouse.
You have to be looking for a mouse
to see them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You have to be looking for them to find them.
Right. I remember back in like 2000, one of my publishers was like, you ever consider changing your name to something that's not C? And I'm like, no, at this point, no. That's what it is. If people want to look for my book, they'll find it.
Yeah.
But that's the beautiful thing about ebooks, I guess, these days. It's like an audio. Nobody really gives a shit.
Well, shelf position's a lot less important. That's for sure.
So Frank is a former police officer, and were you writing when you were a police officer too? I assume you were.
Yeah. I did a little bit when I first started, and then after a couple of years on the job, I started I went back to school full time, and my position was changing up every year or so, every year and a half. So I was constantly learning something new on the job, working shift work. And then I was going to college full time from 96 to 98. So I didn't do a lot of writing in there.
Right.
So I was about 10 years on the job, 11 years on the job when I finally was in a position where personal life was settled, done with college, and the job. I was in a day gig with an office for a couple of years. And then I was like, whoo, catch my breath and let's start writing some fiction again. And of course, crime fiction is what came out because that was what I was experiencing every day and had been for a decade.
Right. And you're pretty prolific too. What are you up to now? How many books?
It's over 50. I think 53. I'd have to go double check. Sometimes I get confused about, am I working on number 53 or is 53 waiting to come out?
I know. I lost count myself, but I mean, and we're talking like 60,000 word books, right?
Yeah. I mean, all of them are full length books. There's a couple that are shorter novels, 40 to 50 range. And then, to be fair, there's like 16 or 17 of them that are co-authored books as well. So I only wrote half of those, but I edited 100% of it along with my co-author. And so it's less work than writing a book by yourself, but it's not half as much work. That's for sure. It's just,
I would think I've never done it. I mean, I've been hired to like ghost another person's book and I'll never do it again. But I actually think writing a book with somebody else would be more work, just because your aesthetics are not the same. You'd have to. I mean, the only person I throw this around with sometimes is Tom Schreck, because we're both Albany. We're Albany's mystery writers, and we talk about it, but we never do it.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you go about it. I mean, for a lot of the first 10 or so, we were writing alternate first person chapters with two separate characters. And so having a different voice was the way what you wanted. I mean, you wanted that distinction and it worked really well. And we would only lightly edit each other before we got to the end and turn it over to a third party. But the last 6 or 7 have been third person, while I might write a particular section or my co-author might write a different section, sometimes we take one character and only write that character, but I mean, it changed throughout the series with one character and so forth. And where it really comes together, though, what I learned um, when I first started doing it that way, it comes together in the editing process. So you might have chapters that have a little bit of your distinct voice in there or sound like you, and some other chapters might sound like your co-author. But if you go in and edit with both of you having a heavy hand and both of you being full, 100% authority to change whatever, or at least initially, we can talk about it if we don't agree, sort of thing.
Right.
You end up with a third voice. So like my Charlie 316 series that I write with Colin Conway, his 509 books don't sound like Charlie 316, and my River City books don't sound like Charlie 316, because that series has a distinct voice that's a meshing of our two individual voices and our joint editing process that's pretty heavy handed. And so very, very, very seldom can people successfully pick out, oh, you wrote this part, didn't you? Or you wrote that character, didn't you? And usually they're wrong.
Right.
That's how unique of a third voice it's turned out to be. So that's kind of cool.
Right. It reminds me, the only way I would do this is the way Sam Shepard and Patti Smith used to do it, like do their plays. He'd type a sentence, a provocative sentence, an opening sentence. It's all dialogue, right?
Yeah.
And then he flipped the typewriter over to her at the kitchen table. He'd answer the question, or probably write something just as provocative, and then he'd take it over, and and it would be a Sam Shepard play by the end. Sam Shepard, Patti Smith play by the end of it. But that
we did that, something very akin to that. Colin was the first guy that I wrote anything with. We wrote one book together called Some Degree of Murder, which was set in my River City universe. It's the 9th River City book. And then we didn't write again together for anything new anyway for like 11 or 12 years. But that was with one of those that had that first person dual narrative with alternating chapters. But we got to a point where the two characters were in the same scene. And the way that we ended up deciding to handle that was to have alternating sections, like almost like a scene break in between each one. So you'd get one guy's perspective, and then instead of a chapter break, you'd get a scene break, and then the other person would pick it up right there. And we wrote that at a coffee shop with a laptop, and we would write the little segment, and then exactly like you described, turn it around and push it to the other person. And
that's a good idea.
We had a little bit of an idea where it was going to go at that stage, but there was a lot of room for left turns, but that we've only ever done that once. And more recently writing the Charlie 316 series, which is 6 books now, we get together and brainstorm. We get together and outline a pretty decent outline, and then we get to writing. So it's a completely different process.
Very interesting. And you do all these books through. I believe, Frank, you're a hybrid author like me. You do some traditional, some on your own, whatever.
I was
with Down and Out.
No, I was a hybrid for quite a while, and Down and Out Books had probably 90% of my
catalog,
non-indie published catalog. So I had about 50% of my stuff that I published independently, about 45 of it with Down and Out, and 5% elsewhere. Right. And what I finally came to the conclusion of, was that if I was going to do any successful marketing, I needed to have everything under one banner. So it was either get Down and Out to take the rest of my titles, or buy out the contracts and go full indie with all the titles. And so I kind of waited out, decided to go full indie, had a very good business conversation with Down and Out Books, parted on excellent terms, bought out the contracts. We were both, felt like it was a fair arrangement. Yep. And but I still have the Grifter Song series is with Down and Out Books, of which you are a part.
Which I was proud to be a part of. Yep.
Yeah. So that's with them. And I just actually had a story come out in one of their Chop Shop anthology entries. So I still have a good relationship with Down and Out. I just
Yep.
wanted to have full control, and
Yeah.
that was the determining factor.
Which kind of leads me to, but first of all, I have to preclude this by saying Frank is going to be one of our star authors for True Pulp, our new anthology, which will be arriving in August, I believe. Our Kickstarter, our Kickstarter begins June 3rd. That'll run all month. Some awesome rewards there. I'll be really pushing it as the time approaches, and it's approaching quickly. This is the first time I've ever been a part of an anthology. Well, first of all, this is the first time I've ever co-edited an anthology, but certainly it's the first anthology I've ever belonged to that is going to have a Kickstarter attached to it. So we're pretty excited about that. And Frank's got like the longest story. It's like 51 pages, and it's a killer. And
yeah, I cheated a little bit.
That's all right.
I figured all you can do is say no.
Yeah, don't piss off the cop. But all this said, like the reason I was asking it's first of all, when you ask an author like, you know, how do you publish, who publishes what's your advances and all this sort of stuff, it's nobody's business. Absolutely nobody's business. You know, it's like what color underwear are you wearing? You know, like it's none of your fucking business, you know. But the reason I ask it is because, you know, I feel like in 2025 we have entered officially a new era of pulp fiction. Meaning, the way I think of it is, we can write any kind of thriller we want, any kind of mystery, any kind of action, any kind of western, any whatever, any kind of like Twilight, which is quickly becoming like a category unto itself. Any kind of Twilight Zone style story, anything you want. You could publish if you have your own imprint, like we both do. You can publish as fast as you want, as fast as you feel as though it's, so long as the book is good and edited well. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like we've entered that type of thing? Because I will say this, I do like maybe 2 books with Down and Out a year right now. Only publisher I'm working with at present, other than I still have 2 books with Amazon Publishing, one of their imprints. But I feel like this is the way to make money. Have your own imprint. Like without this, I got to look for another way to make money. But how do you feel about this?
Well, it's a big question. I mean, there's a lot of dangling threads there to grab onto. I mean, I think the thing I like about indie publishing is that, that agility, that flexibility. I'm working on a book in my Sandy Banks thriller series, and when I'm done with that, I get to choose. Do I want to go back to River City? Do I want to, write another Copriva mystery? Do I want to do something that's more pulpy, a little more hard-boiled, and jump into my Spoke Compton series? I have all these options. And the other thing is having your own storefront to go with your own imprint. The cool thing about that is I can do things like I can price it $1 less than the retail. I can have things that are exclusive to the Code 4 Press bookstore. You can't get them anywhere else, and I do. And then when I release something new, I've been releasing it on the Code 4 Press bookstore site like 90 days, 120 days ahead of the retail release. So you have the power to give your readership, a chance to get it cheaper, sooner, or for, something they can't get anywhere else. And so that kind of, freedom is definitely a plus. Of course, the downside is you're footing the bill for everything, and you have to manage your own marketing and, it's, everything's a trade-off. There are advantages to being traditionally published. When people ask me like the question, what should I do? It's like, it's such a huge question, but it really comes down to what do you want? Like, what do you want? Because, the two things are just two sides of the same coin. I mean, it's heads or tails. What's important to you? What do you want from the experience? And if you say certain things, then I would steer you towards traditional publishing. If you say different things, I would steer you
Right.
towards considering indie publishing.
Right.
But if you're talking about like the new age of pulp, I don't know that I write enough that qualifies to be an expert on that. I know that, like, I think the Grifter Song series would fall into that category.
Most definitely.
And that was a different sort of series tonally, because like your episode had, like, it had some pretty edgy stuff in it, and it also had some humor. And then, there are other episodes that were very PG, and even one that had a romantic subplot sort of thing going on. I mean, it was between the two main characters who are already together, but there was a romantic tension issue that she chose to explore, and everything in between. And so having the freedom to, I think that's what pulp gives you, is like that freedom to explore whatever kind of story you want to tell within certain parameters, so that readers aren't disappointed. I mean, they don't want to pick up a pulp novel and get, Highlights magazine or anything like that, or
no, I think they want to be entertained, and I'm always saying escape. Like, to me, I don't care if you're reading the pulp from the 1930s or the pulp from close to the 2030s, 2030s, Jesus. The whole point is to escape the everyday, and if you're lucky enough to be prolific, you can make some decent money. I hate to bring it down to money or something like that, but like Frank was just talking about, the traditional publishers and spending money on marketing and stuff like that. Like, I've spent thousands with traditional publishers on marketing because they didn't have the money. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, spending this money so they can get 50% of it at least. In some cases, 65 to 70% of it. With Down and Out, they will reimburse me some of the marketing money. So that's okay. That's just a deal I have with the owner. But the only publisher I've ever worked with that, like, and this is the whole reason you want to be with them, is Thomas and Mercer at Amazon Publishing, because everybody wanted to be with them because they handle all the marketing, and they push you. They push your title. It'll be an Amazon editor's pick. It'll be overall top 10 at least, if not number one. That's their specialty, is just to push the crap out of your book. They have a strong revolving door policy, but if you're lucky enough to even do one or two books with them, you're gonna that'll take care of your year. Your year will be all set.
Yeah. Well, yeah. When people ask, like, why would you go indie, or why would you go with traditional? I tell them, look, I mean, when you're considering indie publishing, you just kind of have to ask yourself, what can a publisher do for me that I can't do for myself? If you're getting ready to make that leap. And if you really think about it, you can hire an editor, you can hire a book cover designer, you can hire an interior book designer if you're not able to do any of those things yourself. You can pretty much do just about everything. And I came down to it, like, there's only two things that a publisher could do for me that I couldn't very easily do for myself. And one of those was advertising and marketing. And if you're with a publisher that isn't doing that, then it's like, well, I mean, that's like being in a sexless marriage or something. I mean, a piece of the equation isn't there, and you have to decide if you can live with it or not. And the other thing was cachet, was legacy or legitimacy, both, actually. So, there's still something to be said in some quarters from some readers if you say, yeah, my book was published by Random House, by Penguin, by Scribner and Sons, or whatever. And if that matters to somebody, then boom, you've got that legitimacy. But I mean, I wasn't getting any advertising out of the publisher I was with. Down and Out wasn't doing any advertising, really, aside from very, very basic things. And so I felt like I was giving them 50% of my royalties for the right to say I'm with Down and Out Books, which isn't nothing, right? But was it worth 50%? And meanwhile, I mean, I was seeing basically the same income from my Down and Out titles as I was with my indie published titles. So that kind of answered my question. And it's kind of a funny world we live in. Like I mean, there's been so many stories of publishers who passed on books that were some of the greatest books ever published. But
Sure.
we act like
Happens
because
all the time.
yeah, but we act like because this is a business that publishes books that they think they can make money on, that somehow them saying, "Oh, this book that Vincent wrote, this book is good because we chose it." And yet, if I said to you, "Hey, I'll publish that for you as part of my indie Code 4 Press, I'll publish that for you." Well, you're just a guy. Or if I publish it myself, oh, nobody vetted that.
Right.
Well, okay, well, I mean, I guess you're right. Nobody vetted it, but the readers are buying it and they're reading it and they're rating
Right.
it high. So, well, I mean, not that there's not a lot of self-published crap out there, but I got to be honest with you, there's a fair amount of traditionally published crap too, if you really get down to it. It's just pretty,
no doubt about it. Yeah.
So
listen, dear listener out there, dear watcher, or whatever. Publishers don't take books because they think they're good or well written. They take them because they think they can sell them, and 99% of the time they can't sell them, and that author is out on the street. My very first book, you remember, As Catch Can. It's now The Innocent. Delacorte bought that in a 2-book deal. They changed the name to As Catch Can, which is terrible. But it sold humbly. It didn't, and I eventually got the rights back, changed the name back to The Innocent, actually went through that manuscript again, and here it is, Delacorte. And I found so many errors and so many gaffes, and that I was able to correct. And then an upstart indie publisher published it 10 years later, and it sells 100,000 copies in a month. The original title, so new title, brand new cover, which is spectacular. The packaging was way better, everything. And that book still sells well today. So, like, just because you're with a major does not mean you're going to sell, not even close.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pyramid. It's not a pyramid scheme, but it is a pyramid. I mean, that there are people who are at the top of that pyramid who are selling really, really well. And of course, if you're smart business, you put your money behind those things that are selling really, really well.
Absolutely.
But I mean, it's been decades since we first started hearing about mid-list authors getting shunted to the side, and that's pretty much what continues to happen. So, and you have to ask yourself, I mean, if also why you're doing it. If your purpose is earning a living, then you have to focus on that aspect of it.
Right.
And I don't mind when the money rolls in or trickles in, whichever the case may be for each individual title. I don't say no. Don't give me your money when you buy my book. But at the same time, I mean, I'm retired off the job. I'm not relying on my writing income. It's all gravy. And so the nice part for me is I can focus on the artistic side of it without like worrying if I'm going to make my house payment or not. And that's very freeing as well. Let you pursue which book do you want to write next? And do you want to stretch? I mean, you talk about the ability to stretch into pulp or I mean, I've been able to write science fiction. I've been able to write humor. And I think if I was relying on, and other crime fiction, a couple other crime fiction series, that if I was relying on what was selling the best, all I'd be writing would be River City and Stefan Kopriva, which is a spinoff from River City. I mean, I'd be up to 45 novels by now because that's what sells the best. And that's okay. That if that was my sole purpose, but the fact that I don't have to rely on that allows me to go, hey, you know what? I want to write some hard-boiled stuff. I want to go be with the bad guys for a while. So I'm going to write a series about bad guys. So I go write Spoke Compton, which, I'll be writing the 6th book in that series later this year. And that's a lot of fun, and it keeps you fresh.
It does.
So
it does. And there's nothing like getting back into those characters, that you love so much. And, I mean, it's such a great feeling. And one more comment on the business end of it. I at one point I was not only have my own imprint, but I was dealing with several publishers, a couple medium-sized ones, the small press, and a large press. And the two medium-sized, I'm not going to mention who it is. One of them's gone belly up. But the advances weren't very big. They were $3,000 to $5,000. And I noticed with both of them, as soon as you were about to earn out, they would discount the book, the ebook. 85% of your sales that come from ebooks usually. They would discount it to like $1.99. And by the time you got your cut, there was no way you were going to earn out your advance. And so, like, I ended up having a huge battle with one of these publishers. Like, I mean, calling them every name in the book and all this sort of stuff, and I was like, that's it. That, other than if it's something I want to go traditional with, it's going to be Bear Media, and that's it. I'm sick and tired of the game, because you need to. Well, I mean, in my case, I need to eat. I need to pay the mortgage and all that stuff. So, but that was it for me.
Well, you have to look out for yourself. I mean, it's your investment and it's your art. I think you have to guard against overzealous editing. I mean, you certainly have to be edited. You can't just slap something together and think it's brilliant.
Right.
I mean, it never is. But you also have to guard your ideas and your purpose, what you're trying to get across, or protect your characters sometimes. And it's all, at the end of the day, your name's on the book cover. And I never saw anybody get ripped in a review about how much a book sucks because the editor wasn't very good, or whatever. It's always the author, of course, and it should be. Right. So I think you have to stand up for yourself a little bit and be true to whatever you're trying to accomplish, whether that's on the business side or the creative side.
I think that's a great place to end it. Well, I think I've done 3 or 4 of these podcasts specifically for True Pulp, which will be out again in August. And this is the first one we've done where we talked a lot about the business end of things, which I think is really interesting because sort of an insider's look that people don't realize. A lot of people who are just readers, they don't have a clue about, how it really works, especially in 2025. So, Frank, thanks for coming on. Where can people find you?
I have a website, frankzafiro.com. There's links on there to my other 2 pen names.
It'll be down there.
frankzafiro.com. And then about 99% of my stuff is available at Code 4 Press. That's the number 4, code4press.com. At the Code 4 Press bookstore. Get it cheaper, sooner. And hey, I didn't mention before, but I get a larger share of the royalty there than if you go retail too. But really, anywhere you get your books, I'm appreciative. Any connection with a reader, it doesn't matter where it came from. Unless you pirated it, then you're a son of a bitch.
Excellent, Frank. I agree with you. I know I get these Google alerts, and it's like some site, I'm sure you get the same, there's one of my titles being pirated, in any case.
I guess we should be, I mean, in a weird way, I guess we should be a little flattered that they care enough. But
I guess. I know. Well, maybe it'll help sell books on the other hand too. So who knows? All right, brother. I'm looking forward to to True Pulp, seeing your story featured there, and we will talk to you. Cool. I believe my co-editor for True Pulp and I will be on Frank's very, very professional, very, very popular podcast at the end of June. Are we coming out?
You guys will be dropping. Yeah, you're coming on at the end of June, and it'll be the first week of July when the episode drops. Wrong Place, Right Crime is the name of the podcast.
Yeah, it's terrific.
Squeezed in a special episode because it's a good time to push the anthology.
All right, I appreciate it, Frank, and everybody else. I wish you all ciao ciao.